Wakefield. Today is June 11th, 2018, and we need to go into executive session. We need to go into executive session because it may be detrimental to the town due to pending litigation with Woods LLC, and we are coming out into open session right afterwards. We'll be back.
Okay, ask for a motion.
You want to ask for a motion?
We need a motion. So I say, all in favor? Roll call. Sorry. Roll call.
Aye.
Aye.
Yes.
Aye.
Aye.
Yes.
And we're in executive session. Welcome back from executive session. Thank you for the delay. I'm sorry it took an hour, but any town business that goes into executive session definitely needs all the time it needs. So let's move right into public participation, and we do have two. Just to remind the public speakers tonight just to come up, and when I call your name, just state your name and address, and you have 3 minutes, give or take. I'll give you some leeway, but just to let you know, there's no back and forth with the town council. Again, try to make it 3 minutes, just for the sake of everyone else. But thank you very much for waiting. I know it was an hour, so thank you. First, we have Julie Scott.
Good evening.
Welcome.
I'm a teacher, so I'm into gadgets and things.
Okay. We'll have to get a close-up on that from camera one.
And if I could, maybe through you, if I could distribute these to the members, it pretty much contains everything else. There, I'm all set up. Can you hear me? My name is Julie Scott. I live at 226 Main Street, right near the Common, here in Wakefield. I'm not here on behalf of any committee or any group in town. My concern stems from the 16-minute kiosk presentation and vote during your May 31st meeting on the digital kiosk that was voted on 11 days ago. The digital kiosk is to be located right on the Wakefield Common, near the corners of Lake Avenue, Church Street, and Common Street. My concerns involve aesthetics, communication, public safety, and effectiveness. I'm asking that the council reconsider the placement of the digital kiosk for these reasons. No permanent kiosk changes should be made outside of the town's business district. Reason number 1, aesthetics. Wakefieldians love the scene of the lake, the two commons, the gazebo, and the hiker monument. It is majestic and it represents quintessential New England. The town common is everyone's front lawn. It's a valuable asset to the community and should be preserved in its current state. The town council has voted to place a digital kiosk set in cement, basically a large computer that sounds like it will be lit up 24 hours a day, 7 days a week in the heart of Wakefield. This is the most photographed area of our community. The beauty of the town needs to be preserved, while at the same time the businesses downtown need to be supported. Without beauty, people will not come and they will not shop at the stores. It seems a vote was taken and members of the council, some anyway, have expressed to me that in retrospect they did not have enough information. Please step back and take another look. Nothing permanent should be placed outside of the business area. And while it's on my mind, maybe asking the police chief for some input would be helpful as well. Number 2, communication. I request that the town council and organizations that spring out from it always communicate with established groups that have a history of working in that area, in areas of the community. WCNA and FOLQ deserve a seat at the table. They represent a lot of voters in Wakefield. My understanding is that the Main Streets program only has the authority to impact the business district area. Grant money came in, and the digital kiosk idea was born to no public fanfare, and suddenly the ideas spread to the lake. It was at this point when other town groups should have been notified. The WakefieldMainStreets.org site states under the term organization, and I quote, "Wakefield Main Streets brings residents, businesses, and government together to support and improve our downtown. Our community of dedicated volunteers is the foundation for all of our efforts to revitalize our downtown. I request clarification that the Main Streets program limits the work to just the business district. Their website states that their mission is to, and I quote, establish and promote downtown Wakefield as a vibrant, inviting destination by fostering historic preservation, economic renewal, and community involvement. Do we all view the common and the entire shoreline of the lake as a commercial district? What exactly do you all view as the scope and sequence of the authority of the Main Streets program? Should it focus only on the business district? That I support. Number
Okay,
3,
Julie, just to let you know, Julie, it's 3 minutes, just to, if you
I
can
just
try to
have
wrap it up.
till there?
Sure,
And then
sure,
at
go
the
ahead.
bottom? Perfect.
Sure.
Thanks so much.
You're welcome.
Gracious of you. I believe I was on number 3, public safety. Putting the lit-up digital kiosk just a few feet away from 3 crosswalks is a public safety issue. Near the Congregational Church are 4 intersecting roadways. I know how few cars stop for pedestrians here. Drivers, being distracted by the lit-up kiosk, will be distracted and will take a look. The kiosk will be doing its intended job, and that job is, in fact, to get everyone's attention. Drivers' attention should be on the road in front of them and the 3 crosswalks nearby. Number 4, effectiveness. In my opinion, this technology is a freestanding, looks to be approximately 8-foot-high computer. I have a phone that I walk with when I do the lake. I have a map app that shows me the exact same picture of the lake that would be on the kiosk. I can speak into my phone, and I can ask about restaurants and stores in Wakefield, and an up-to-date list rapidly appears. Many people like me use fitness apps, and the lake appears. What information will you have on this kiosk that I do not already have instant access to on my cell phone? I hope that we can step back and revisit the placement of that one digital kiosk so that the citizens of the community like me, who do shop on a regular basis downtown, feel that they too have been considered fairly. If some think we need this, and that's a matter of opinion, can this one digital kiosk be placed somewhere else in the business district? Note, the WakefieldMainStreets.org site map shows a smaller information kiosk near the Common, not a large 4-sided digital lit-up kiosk. In closing, I request that each council member tonight address their view of taking steps back to vote on the placement of this digital kiosk. The Wakefield Main Streets website states, quote, together with the entire Wakefield community, Wakefield Main Streets will focus effort in 4 crucial areas to make our downtown a thriving and attractive destination, unquote. Do you all feel that the Main Streets program, in fact, is charged with duties out of the business district, extending to the entirety of the lake's shores? Can each town council member clarify their thinking on this? Going forward, people will be looking at how decisions like this will be made. I believe we can support our local businesses and keep the scenic corner of Wakefield beautiful at the same time. Please rethink the vote. No permanent changes should be made outside of the business district. Please invite local volunteer groups to the process. Sometimes...
Julie, thanks. This is 6 minutes now.
Oh,
I've
okay.
been really generous, I think.
Thank you.
So
No,
just-
thank
but-
you. I sincerely
Okay.
mean it. Thank you so much.
Just because there's a lot of people here tonight.
Thanks.
Thanks very much,
It
Julie.
is a full house. Thank you.
Thanks.
You have my copy.
Thank you very much. Okay, next we have Meg Michaels. Again, just the 3 minutes is, seems like it went out the window, but that's okay. If you, no, it's okay. Just if you can state your name and address, and just be kind to the other folks waiting.
Hi, I am Meg Michaels, 17 Fielding Street. I moved to Wakefield over 30 years ago, and like many of you, I moved here because of Lake Quannapowitt. I'm really lucky to have this beautiful lake in my backyard. I walk it, run it, kayak it. Constantly, I'm around it. I'm here to request Town Council to prohibit Main Street Initiative or any other organization or any other town body to install any structure without communication with Friends of Lake Quannapowitt. They did not even know it, and I'm talking as an individual citizen. I'm not talking from Friends of Lake Quannapowitt, even though I've been a member from the start of the organization. I've been a member since Gertrude Spalding recruited me because she knew I loved the lake so much. She always stressed to me the importance of keeping the lake beautiful. She'd be shocked to know that a commercial electronic sign was installed by the lake. And I want to share with you, I also sell real estate, and so many of my clients say, Melrose is so much more attractive than Wakefield. Market Street is so much more attractive. Both places have no electronic or neon signs. Melrose has a very pretty non-neon sign. I really don't think having a flashy sign will attract more people, and it'll certainly make it an uglier place, in my opinion. Lesson learned. From previous experiences, the town rushed to install telephone poles around the town, specifically the Gertrude Spalding Park. That generated a big backlash. Town administrator and the council took leadership by remedying the park by removing that blight. Did we learn from that? Or are we perhaps making the same mistakes? Let's thank Friends of the Lake and their members for creating the beautiful Gertrude Spalding Park instead of a busy restaurant. Let's thank members and residents of Friends of Lake Quannapowitt for stopping the crematory. Many of you are newer and you don't remember when town groups gave permission to have a crematory by the lake. Let's thank them for the foresight of keeping Lake Quannapowitt beautiful. Is that 3 minutes? What?
That was the gone, right?
Okay,
Like the
one more
Gone
minute?
Show.
Yeah,
It's like-
real quick. And just, Friends of Lake put up 3 kiosks. They're there now. And we used to be able to change the material in it, and the town took that from us. And if you know, and Julie said it at the last meeting, that the information isn't up to date. Why are we going to know that if isn't information going to be up to date now when it wasn't, for years that they've been there? And I'll be really quick. So I want to, and the other thing, like Julie said, I'm real concerned with public safety. I run around the lake. I run the Wednesday run around the lake. And in the summertime, it is so dangerous at that intersection. I'm concerned about them taking away the grass and putting more cement there for the structure. Please, please, keep me busy in work. I do sell real estate in town, and I want all your real estate values to stay high. People move here because of the lake. Let's keep it beautiful. Thank you.
Thanks very much. Yeah, you got it? Okay. Okay, going back to the schedule.
Can I make one brief comment? I was either solo or Brody. I agree with the two previous speakers 100%.
Okay, thanks, Jim. Okay, well, I want to get back to the agenda. So next is 3 for the approval of the minutes. Regular board minutes, May 31st, 2018. Do I have a motion? No, oh, okay. Second, and yes, discussion.
Well, we have discussion, but I
Sure.
would move to table these to the next meeting. There's 1 or 2 points that I just wanted some clarification on.
Okay. Any other conversations on that? Is that something that you saw? So that's fine with me.
Small
That's
clarifications.
okay. And so, all in favor to postpone? I'm sorry.
Motion needs to be seconded.
Oh, I think it was second.
It was seconded.
Oh, I thought.
No, not Julie.
So I'll rescind my second on the initial vote to approve the minutes to allow Julie to make her motion that we table the minutes in order for us to have some review on them prior to making the vote.
Okay. So, Ed, did you have a question though on that? Just
Discussion, I guess. What are the clarifications?
okay.
Want me to outline it?
Sure, if you can expand, sure.
Sure, so I, 2 primary ones. There was the farmer's market resolution that I think was just, missed a small point that I clarified before voting, and I voted based on that small point. And I think we all have the same understanding. I just want it to be reflected in the minutes.
Sure, okay.
And there's a similar on the, just some understanding on the kiosks as well.
Okay, so we have a motion, we have a second, we had discussion. Any other further questions, discussion? So who's second? You'll second again, okay. And so all in favor to postpone the approval of the minutes for regular board minutes, May 31st, 2018? All in favor?
Aye.
Was that 6? Okay, 6 to 1? Okay, 6 to 1. Okay, so, okay, let's get to 4. Presentation action items. So Charter Review Committee, we have, I think John Carney is going to speak tonight. Is John still here, or do you leave? Oh, John, how are you, John? Welcome. Sorry about the hour and 15-minute delay, but you're always worth wasting for. And I'm sorry, Ally, too. Allison Houghton. Yeah, good to see you.
I'm pleased to have our Vice Chairman, Allison Houghton, with us, and also going to join me in the presentation.
Sure, John, just to clarify too, I want to let you speak all the way through your presentation, no interruptions, and then we can ask questions afterwards, right? So
Thank you, Mr.
let you finish. Okay.
With us tonight, we have Eric Reed, Ann Santos, who has been a very, very valuable liaison to our committee. And by the way, happy birthday, Ann. Andy Bray is here. Stacy had to leave. We have busy lives beyond this, but Stacy's been very, very helpful in creating some of our, in kind of posturing some of our positions. John DeTona's with us tonight. Chris Farley couldn't make it, and Susan Wetmore's with us. The Charter Committee took a little bit of a different approach than I know that you're very, very familiar with what the Bylaw Committee has done and what a great job they've done, but quite frankly, they went to town meeting with, I believe it was Article 21, and I still don't believe I understand what it says, but I voted for it, and with one little small flaw, the issue came up relative to the Permanent Building Committee, but other than that, they did a wonderful job. We took a little bit more of a conservative approach. We don't believe we'd want to go to a referendum question in a ballot. The charter changes have to first be voted in at a town meeting, then they have to be put on the ballot. I think we would need a lot more explanations being sent out to the public to be able to explain some real changes. And that does not mean that the charter doesn't need some word changes. An example I'll give you is the fact that the Public Works is probably the most well-described department in the town in accordance in the charter itself. But our questions initially came up with why aren't we explaining all the other departments the same way? And then we said, well, why should we have that kind of explanation in the charter? And we didn't want to change something in the charter that could cause people to be uncomfortable about the changes we're making and have to explain them when there are some real good things that we think should be brought before the public and that the public should have a chance to vote on. So we've kind of taken a conservative approach, and that is to try to get some ideas that the people may appreciate and move on from there.
So one of the changes that we are looking at is section 3.1, the elected town officers. Elective officers, the officers to be filled by voters shall be the Board of Selectmen, School Committee, Town Moderator, and the Town Clerk. We've looked at taking out the Board of Assessors, and we've looked at taking the Board of Assessors out for the reasons of they've requested the change, first and foremost. There's also a lot of limited interest by new candidates that should sit on the Board of Assessors. It should be more of an appointed office than an elected office. Because people that would apply, they're very interested in it, they have that background, and the town council would be able to look into those people. And it's very common in mostly other communities other than Wakefield. And one of the cons, though, would be more authority to the executive offices.
I think we're on the wrong slide, just to get you back on that.
It keeps
Just so
going
that
on its
folks at
own.
home know where we're at.
It's on a timer.
Where do you want to,
It keeps going on its own.
where do you want to be?
Right, yeah, go right there. Yep.
Okay. Okay.
Thank you.
The next change, whoop,
It's very sensitive to the attention.
very bouncy.
All right, hold on, let me check inside.
The next we changed town moderator. The issue is town moderator is the only elected position, paid or unpaid, and of course town moderator is not paid, that isn't elected for more than a one-year term. So it constantly requires him to go out and petition to get on the ballot each year. And we thought it was only fair to do that. And we don't believe it's changing anything that would affect the public. The next thing is the establishing of the requirement in filling vacancies in the Finance Committee.
The pros for that we would look at would be establishing a consistent process, and it would minimize the vacancies on that committee. We also were looking at reassigning responsibilities from the past chairperson of the Finance Committee to the current chairperson. The outgoing chairperson might not be available, and there's no chair succession. Who's next? This would fix that problem. And the cons that we haven't had any come up to date.
The next item is eliminating the Advisory Board of Public Works. Quite frankly, this issue came before us because there was a request by a member and a former member of the Advisory Board of Public Works to make it an elected board. And we reviewed it from that standpoint. We went back in the one area. We did go back to the initial town meeting back in 1998, and we looked at the item records of what was going on at that point in time. And part of it, I have to be honest with you, since I was around, it was somewhat of a controversy. There was always a conflict between the Board of Selectmen at the time, now the council, and the advisory and the Board of Public Works, the elected Board of Public Works. And people didn't know who to go to. And I think the charge that came out of the charter committee at that point in time, and back then it was an elected charter committee, was that they wanted all the responsibility to be with the Board of Selectmen, now the city town council, and that way people would know who to go to. When we went and met with the Advisory Board of Public Works, we found out that, quite frankly, and we'll read the charter as well, we found out that according to the charter, they shouldn't have been meeting with the Director of Public Works at all. They should have been meeting with the town administrator. But I think going back to the initial charter changes back in 1998, the former town administrator, Tommy Butler, had signed that to Rich Stinson. And as time went along, it grew beyond what their responsibilities really were. And they were asking to be a board. They wanted to basically have people who were more knowledgeable in the field working with Public Works. As a committee, we didn't feel that was necessary. We're bringing that before your board just because I think so. Maybe you think differently. Maybe you think there was a value in this that I never saw. But I think it's when you go and vote in the water rates, you're really doing your own homework. You're not looking for someone else to advise you on that. And you'd rather have the Director of Public Works reporting directly to you, as he does through the town administrator. So that was our position on the Advisory Board of Public Works.
We're also looking at moving the town elections to the second Tuesday in April, or possibly to November to coincide with state and national elections. We're looking to move the town meetings later in the spring to the second Monday of May, which will allow for more accurate estimates of state revenue and costs. One of the reasons we're looking at moving the town elections is that so it wouldn't fall so close to Wakefield School's spring vacation. We thought about this and we think a lot of people just getting back from school vacation, getting back into the swing of things, that Tuesday right after that vacation, they're not really in that election mindset. Maybe they're coming back, they're not fully aware of who's running or what's on the ballot or all of that, so they don't go to vote because they don't feel like they're educated on it, or they just completely forget it altogether because they're busy getting those kids back to school and getting back into the swing of things. We think by moving this, it will help people maybe be a little more aware of town elections, get out and vote a little bit more. One of the cons that we did look at was if we do move the town elections in April, this could be moving it 2 weeks earlier, and is that going to give people running adequate time to prepare?
Let's see, adding emails, legitimate form, these are procedural changes. The town administrator had informed us that basically now we're using email when email is not incorporated into the charter itself. The more electronic communications we do, it doesn't mean that you couldn't send a letter out or communicate through the U.S. mail, but the fact that now everybody's getting into the easier way of passing emails on. Next one is eliminating the secret ballot form of voting at town meeting. I recall that back in 1998, when this was passed, there was a very, very controversial issue going on throughout the state, and that was called the Quinn Act. And basically, you know, just like I've seen recently and we've recently witnessed, people wanted to insinuate that they felt threatened because we're voting on the police officer's salary, that there may be some sort of retaliation. I think not many of us that I knew, many people I knew thought that, but it was one of those compromises where, okay, they're going to throw it in to have a secret ballot. More recently, we had a secret ballot as it related to the gender-neutral title change, and I think afterwards there was so few votes. I don't know who could have been afraid of voting in any particular direction on that issue. So we don't think it's necessary. We also, and this is one that it's going to come up for some discussion, changing town business days to calendar days for the purpose of filing deadlines and accounting days for town business. And this affects two different things. It affects when an article would have to be reconsidered for town meeting, but also it would be for people getting a number of signatures for a referendum vote, which is going on at this very time.
We've been looking at the budget process, changing the timing of when the preliminary budget is adopted by the school committee and the subcommittee, and then submitted to town administration from 90 days to 60 days. This will give town administration and the school committee a little more adequate time getting the budgets in place for town meetings.
We recognize the fact that state statute has affected the local housing authority. We're not suggesting anything, but we're just asking that possibly that Tom Mullins, town council, review that to see what other language changes are necessary. We'll change the language relating to the library staff to accurately reflect the lack of clerical staff at the library. And one small change we would recommend in Public Works is to remove the Recreation Department from the powers and duties, because they've never had control over the Recreation Department.
And we've just looked at some just minor editing, grammatical changes throughout the charter, changes to reflect consistency in the language, eliminate transitional proverbs, provisions.
What we feel, what the committee is doing right now, we had a meeting prior, we're just going to meet short time after this meeting. We're putting these ideas out for public participation, for public comments. We're going to meet, we've got it set up on the website, thankful to our town administrator and the IT department, where on the icon that lists the commissions and committees under Charter Committee, we have the full charter. We have a more detailed PowerPoint presentation that we put together with the pros and the cons, and we'll have this video from this portion of the meeting, and we're going to run that through the summer. We're going to have a meeting August 21st, again, to say, okay, where are we going from this, see what the public comment brought us. We're going to be asking the town council to draft a lot of these articles ahead of time, because absent, some major change, would probably be going to the fall town meeting with them. And in September, we're hoping to have a public hearing. We want to just make sure that, we're touching all bases, dotting the i's, crossing the t's, allowing the public to have some further input, and then we would make a recommendation for the articles to go into the fall town warrant. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
That's great. A lot to go over. A lot of good work done. Yes, yes.
So as the liaison, I think we want to make it clear that, it wasn't just the Charter Commission sitting around the table coming up with these decisions, that John invited every department head to come and talk about what might have been inconsistent, what they would like to see changed. Every board was asked to come before the Charter Commission if it was affected by the Charter Commission. And, things like just curing problems, that email is a legitimate form of delivery. That wasn't in the charter. So I think a lot of thought went into some of these big picture issues, and as John said, a much more detailed presentation is PowerPoint is going to be posted on the website. The email will be posted so the public can put their comments on it. Some of the issues with regard to the timing of elections and calendar days Steve brought to our attention that would make his management of the town much easier. So I think a lot of the changes we made are just to make the governance of the town flow more smoothly.
Good. Sean?
First of all, thank you, John, Ally, and the other members that are here tonight. I don't think the public knows how much time you put into this. But yeah, believe me, Andy answered most of my questions. My concern is, did you bring in some of the affected departments? Did you bring in the school committee? And
All of them.
I'm good.
Any other questions from town council?
We did not bring in the permanent building committee, but we had nothing to do with it.
A wide decision, John.
And there will be discussion at some point with how the charter melds with the bylaws. We do know there's some inconsistency there. We're not ready quite to dive in to pick apart the minutia of that, but that will be addressed as well through John.
Ed?
Just one thing that I would just ask that you always be mindful of, I agree with you, email is the primary means of communication for most folks, but we do have elderly folks that don't have a computer and don't have email. So I want to be sure that we're not alienating, any of our, most senior residents in town. So to the extent that that can be part of the consideration. I'm sure that it already is, but I'm just concerned to make sure that they're not somehow, not in the mix.
You had one of our prominent members of the committee uses a flip phone.
Fair enough. T9 and the whole deal.
Can you show
I'm
the
sure.
evidence, John?
Thank you.
Any other questions, comments? Okay. Steve? No? Okay, thank you very much. Yeah, a lot of work. Thank you very much. Look forward to the next few months. Also, that combination with the bylaw committee will be interesting. Okay, next on the agenda is presentation action item B, Tequila's Restaurant. Manager and owner update. Brian, if you want to come on up and bring the tequila folks. Welcome, Brian. Just if you can state your name and
Sure. Can you
address.
just get set up for a minute?
Sure,
Chairman,
set up,
if you don't mind,
absolutely.
please?
Yeah, thanks for the wait, too. Take your
Oh,
time.
no problem. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Members of the council, for the record, my name is Brian McGrail. I'm an attorney in Wakefield with offices at 599 North Avenue. I'm here on behalf of La Chivas, Chivas Inc., doing business as Tequilas. With me tonight is Alvaro Arachiga and Eric Brambilla. As the council may be aware, at least some of the council members, this relates to an all-alcohol license that was issued to Las Chivas by the town council in February of 2018, which was subsequently signed off and approved by the Massachusetts Alcohol Beverage Control Commission on March 26, 2018. I failed to mention, these are both the sole shareholders of the entity, of the company. Alvaro is also the designated manager of the all-alcohol license pursuant to your council's finding in the application that was submitted. Subsequent to your approval, and as required by Wakefield General Bylaw, Chapter 143, Section 1 through 6, Alvaro and Eric both proceeded to have fingerprinting performed by the Wakefield Police Department as is required. And in fact, at the night of that meeting, Town Administrator Mayo referenced that, that has to occur before he would release the license. So that has occurred. Certain matters related to the results or findings of the fingerprinting performed on both Alvaro and Eric were brought to my attention by Town Administrator Mayo as needing to be clarified and/or expanded upon because of lack of clarification, and brought forward to the council for your review prior to him issuing the license to my clients. Lieutenant Scott Rebelay of the Wakefield Police Department was extremely helpful to me on two separate occasions in helping me review and understand the written results of the findings for the fingerprinting. Lieutenant Rebelay and I both agreed and determined that the form and format of the findings when they're printed out and given to you are somewhat confusing, and that oftentimes they just give you codes with really without providing any detail or explanation of their meaning. So it's hard to decipher exactly what transpired or what occurred based on those reports. So after obtaining the written results and getting some guidance from Lieutenant Rebelay, I embarked to meet with my clients to speak with them and also speak to state authorities outside of the Commonwealth, because that's where some of these issues arose, to get a full understanding of what had been presented from the results of the, I guess they call the FBI fingerprinting results. As you're aware, I have submitted detailed correspondence to Town Council, some of which I would like to go through and present at this time. and some of which I'd like you to consider, in all honesty, whether it's necessary to present it at this time, and you will be the folks that will determine that. First of all, as far as Alvaro is concerned, Alvaro was arrested and convicted in Wyoming for a misdemeanor of driving under the influence of alcohol in 2014. This matter was fully disclosed to the town council as a prior criminal conviction, and it was not only disclosed to the town council, it was also disclosed to the Massachusetts Alcohol Beverage Control Commission at the time of application for the all alcohol license, as is required by the beneficial interest contact portion of the application. In fact, your council, at the time of the issuance of the license, discussed that matter in detail and discussed it in detail with Alvaro and questioned him on it. Alvaro, at the time of application, also submitted an affidavit of explanation on that, so it was vetted. In my discussions with Lieutenant Reboulet, he pointed out what I believe is a legitimate concern that the findings as presented included a report from South Dakota referencing the term, quote, multiple DWI, end quote, which obviously caused concern for the police department. You know, what does that mean? After reviewing this with Alvaro and meeting him in detail, he assured me at that time that the only driving under the influence of alcohol incident that he ever had was the 2014 incident in Wyoming, recognizing that that probably would not be enough to convince our council that that was adequate after the reports came back. I approached the officials in South Dakota, the Department of Public Safety and the Licensing Division, and corresponded with them to get his driving record from South Dakota. I submitted that to you in your packet. That's my Exhibit B, which is a detailed report of his incident. In addition to obtaining that report from South Dakota, on Friday, May 11, 2018, I personally had multiple phone calls with the South Dakota Department of Public Safety and Licensing Division. And I have to tell you, that was a Herculean effort to get somebody on the phone. It took about 2 weeks of continually calling and hounding and finally harassing, but they finally, Avella had to be there and obviously identify himself. They finally did speak with me. They confirmed to me on the phone that the one and only driving under the influence of alcohol violation that they show on Alvaro's record is the 2014 Wyoming matter. They also unequivocally stated that Alvaro has never been arrested for, charged, and/or convicted for driving under the influence of alcohol in South Dakota. As you can see, the South Dakota licensing report also references the words multiple DWI, just like the FBI report. So looking ahead of that maybe being raised, I made a follow-up call to the South Dakota Licensing and Safety Board, and I specifically asked why the word multiple was used in their report, and their response was that it is a coding issue, and they again double confirmed to me after I asked again that the only driving under the influence of alcohol matter on Alvaro's driving record is the 2014 Wyoming incident. They further confirmed that the other matters on his driving record were penalties directly related to that Wyoming matter in 2014. In support of this, in addition to the driving record, I've also submitted a detailed affidavit from Alvaro that was submitted as part of that exhibit that states under the pains and penalties of perjury that that is the only time he has been arrested for DWI in Wyoming. I also would like to point out that I talked to one of the issues that Lieutenant Reboulet had referenced on Alvaro was that he did not have a Massachusetts driver's license yet. I was working with him for quite a period of time to get that resolved. His Massachusetts license was issued today, and he has that with him if you would like to see a copy of that. But you are a licensed Massachusetts driver at this point, correct? Yes. Okay. So that has also been resolved because Lieutenant said, you know, we had a concern on that too, that, you know, you should change that right when you move in, but that has been resolved. So that's the answer on Alvaro as far as his fingerprinting results are concerned. The findings on Eric reference 4 statutory indoor ordinance violations, indoor arrests in the city of Chicago occurring back in 2000, 2001, 2005, and 2007, a total of 4. Since the findings provided, the fingerprinting findings provided no detail for each of these matters, or they really didn't tell you whether or not a conviction had occurred, there was very little detail. My office, on behalf of Eric, contacted the Chicago Police Department, Records Department, in an effort to obtain the exact details or reports to each of these matters. I'm on a first-name basis now with the head of the person in the Chicago Police Department Records Division, a very nice gentleman. Unfortunately, my efforts in this regard were not successful. To go back, 2 of these occurrences occurred when Eric was a juvenile, 2000 and 2001, which is a different division, and it's very difficult to get juvenile records going back. So after talking to the gentleman from Chicago, again, who was very helpful, it necessitated Eric to travel to Chicago in an effort to acquire the information in person, because he didn't have an exact recollection of exactly what this. He needed to help refresh his memory on what exactly had occurred. Upon meeting with the Chicago Police Department records, Eric was able to ascertain and obtain information regarding the incidents that I've referred to. I think one thing that we were able to determine is that each of these incidents, and I have submitted, I think, some detail on these to the town council, but each of these incidents did not result in a conviction. There was no conviction on any one of them. So, honestly, I'm prepared to go through these if the town council deems necessary, but on my way down here tonight, prepared to go through it, it honestly struck me, and I said, I'm going to ask the town council if you deem that necessary. And the reason for that is that on the application for the all alcohol license, the question is, and I will read it, and this was signed by Eric. The question is on the personal interest form, have you ever been convicted of a state, federal, or military crime? And he answered no, because he hasn't. And Alvaro answered yes, because he had, and he explained it. So, I want the council to know that there's no bad faith here. He answered the question, and he answered it correctly, because he had never been convicted of any crime. And, the question is, with all due respect, is it something that should be considered? I mean, the application is the application. Were you convicted of a crime? Not were you arrested for an ordinance violation or arrested for something? Is there something else in your past? That's not the question. And so, I would, with all due respect, ask the council to consider that. If you determine that you would like me to go through detail on it, we're prepared to do it. We're not here to duck the issue, but in all fairness to him, I don't know if it's really appropriate, and I wonder if he would be being held to a higher standard to have his personal laundry aired out for everybody when he was not convicted of a crime. As far as our bylaw goes, and I think this is relevant in that regard, so our fingerprinting bylaw, one of the provisions of it states, upon the finding the results of the fingerprinting, and I'll quote from it, the police department shall indicate whether the applicant has been convicted of or is under pending indictment for a crime that bears upon his or her suitability, or any felony or misdemeanor that involve the force or the threat of force, controlled substances, or a sex-related offense. And, certainly none of that was related. And as I just stated, that says a conviction. The report is supposed to be if there was a conviction. There was no conviction. And then, I guess, another component is if you look at, one of the frequently asked questions with the ABCC, which I've done work before, is, are applicants barred from holding a liquor license if they've been convicted of a crime? Which, again, he hasn't, but the answer is yes. An on-premises license, which would include a restaurant, may not be issued to a person who has been convicted of a violation of a federal or state narcotic drug law. So, You know, that's, you know, and honestly, I'm prepared, and I will, if the council feels it's necessary for me to do that, but I just question whether it is, and whatever you decide on that, we will do whatever you want. Mr. Chairman.
Ian?
So I'm not comfortable with us digging through materials at this hearing. We have some information about it. The incident, and I think you're right, you both answered this question absolutely correctly. You weren't convicted of any crimes. You indicated your OUI, and only because of reciprocity did it pop up that it might have been 2 OUIs. You know, in what happened in your younger years, sir, between 2000 and 2007, you probably wish you could take back. But since that time, I've seen nothing but a stellar record, and I don't think Groton and Chelmsford would have given you they're okay to open the restaurants, nor have followed up with a recent letter as of, you know, a few weeks ago saying you've been exemplary owners. I am very uncomfortable if we dig into the past incidents when we don't have to. And if that's the case, then let's dig into every restaurant owner's past that we have. As I was making a joke, you know, I grew up on the troubled streets of Wakefield, as some of us else did. Linfield was a little bit meaner. I'm guessing Ed didn't grow up in troubled streets like that either. I'm just guessing. Paul, I'm guessing your grandmother and mother protected you in Revere. So, you know, I'm just thinking that you probably came from a background that not many of us can understand, and you have made it and are building a very respectable business. So I would not be a fan if our town council dug deep into offenses that they answered truthfully on.
Tony?
Looking at some of the statements from Eric and from Alvaro, you know, you were very forthcoming about the DUI, and I thank you for that. But as far as, you know, Eric, you probably had some youthful indiscretions years ago, well over a decade ago. I'm not comfortable in penalizing you for any of that. I've got a great, we all have stellar codes of conduct from Chelmsford and from Groton that you've been nothing but great owners and, you know, supporters of the community. So, you know, like what Ian stated, you know, I am very comfortable in granting this license to you two.
Questions?
Mr. Chairman, if I may.
Sure, go ahead, Brian.
You know, and I neglected, and I thank Councilor Santos for mentioning it, but just for the record, I submitted 2 letters because Eric, who is the person we're questioning now, is involved in the ownership of 2 other restaurants, one in Groton and one in Chelmsford. Right. And just for the record, the town of Groton issued a letter to Town Administrator Mayo dated May 30, 2018. And what it states is, Dear Town Administrator Mayo, it has come to my attention that Eric Brambilla of Massa Inc., doing business as Ixtapa Mexican Restaurant and Grill, is before the town of Wakefield with an application for an all-alcohol liquor license. Massa Inc. has held an all-alcohol license in Groton since approval from the ABC in January of 2013. They have always been a good corporate citizen, and the town of Groton has not had any problems or violations with their alcohol license. They have been a great addition to the town of Groton, and Wakefield will be lucky to have them in their community also. Should you have any questions or require additional information, feel free to contact me, Mark Haddad, Town Manager, Town of Groton. And then the Board of Selectmen's office in the town of Chelmsford, addressed again to Town Administrator Mayo. This letter is to inform you that La Union Inc., DBA Tequila's Mexican Grill and Cantina, owned by Eric Brambilla, has an all-alcohol license, all-alcohol beverage restaurant license in good standing in the town of Chelmsford. License was issued April 14, 2017, and there have been no problems or violations. Christina Bruce, Support Services Coordinator, Town of Chelmsford. Thank you for letting me do that.
Okay, sure.
Appreciate that.
Ed?
I think I may take issue with my colleagues on this. I think you have opened the door because the fingerprinting revealed things that we didn't know beforehand, and it's reasonable as a town to do our due diligence on this. You submitted affidavits, and if you're going to submit affidavits, then I think they're subject to be questioned. And you've raised these issues before the board. You said in Eric's case there were 4 arrests. I think 3 of them were not when he was a juvenile, and to hear that he didn't have an exact recollection of what had occurred that troubles me because I'm talking about present day. And if someone is asked present day about what had happened in the past, I think you have two paths you can go. One, you can perhaps acknowledge I had done some things wrong, and this is why I'm a better person today. Or you can say, I don't have an exact recollection of what had occurred. And I think the latter is troubling because that, I think, speaks to character or one's judgment today, not what happened 10 years ago. And so I do think it's appropriate to be able to address some of the issues that you have raised before this body at our request.
Well, with all due respect, I didn't raise any issues before this body. I was asked to address certain issues by the town administrator.
I said at our request,
pursuant-
right, this
pursuant
body.
to- So I could have taken the hard stand and said there's no convictions and we don't have to provide anything. I didn't do that. In good faith, I provided as much information as possible. And as I stated earlier, we're happy to go through that information. If your council, deems it, as a group, deems that that's warranted, we're happy to do it. My client will sit here until 2 in the morning and answer any questions that you have if your council deems that is appropriate under the circumstances. He wants to open his business. As Councilor Santos mentioned, unfortunately, he grew up in a pretty difficult area. He really did, and he has fought through that. Some of these incidents, 2 of these incidences happened when he was 16 years old. And now he is, and all of them happened when he was 21 or under. He's approximately 33 years old. He's recently married. He operates 2 successful businesses. If the council deems it necessary to talk about things that happened when he was 16, we're happy to do it. And again, none of them were convictions. These were things that were arrests, and one of them was a violation of an ordinance, which, I'll tell you what, going through this process with Eric for the past 2 months was extremely enlightening to me on what someone like him has had to do and fight through to get through this. I mean, for me to be on the telephone with him when he flies to Chicago, he didn't fly to Chicago for nothing. He needed to get information. He had a lot of issues going on in his life, during his life when he was young. And he didn't want to make misrepresentations, and that's why he went. But to spend the time on the phone with him in Chicago for an hour trying to get as much information as possible, we're happy to discuss it if the council deems it's necessary. I just respectfully would suggest that it isn't.
But I mean, your whole representation was that he didn't have an exact recollection of what had occurred. These are, I read the 4 incidents that you're referring to, the 4 arrests. They're all very distinct in nature. This is not something that would be easily forgotten. And so the fact that, you're representing tonight that he didn't even have a recall of exactly what had occurred.
I don't know if I said he didn't have an exact recall.
You said he didn't have an exact recollection of what had occurred. That's
Yeah,
how it's
okay. So he
represented.
went to Chicago to talk to the people and look at the records and get an exact recollection. Some of this
But-
stuff happened when he was 16.
And looking at
And
these-
none of these things resulted in a conviction.
You
They all
said
were
that.
basically thrown out. So,
Well, I don't know that it says that. I think that's a bit of a leap, but I don't think either you or I are in a position to say that. But I do think when we're looking at this, we're talking about, I mean, these are significant incidents that have occurred. I don't care what age it was. The fact that he's like today saying, he didn't really have much of a recollection of that, that troubles me because this is, we're talking about someone having a privilege, and there's a reason that we do fingerprinting as a part of this process. Was there fingerprinting in Groton and Chelmsford as well?
I don't know. I don't practice here, but I just gave you the main,
Well, I mean,
I just gave you the main reason for
but
the
would your clients
fingerprinting, which is,
know?
the main reason for the fingerprinting, which I told you, is to determine convictions. Maybe it's to determine if someone misrepresented themselves on an application, that, maybe they said they weren't convicted. Now, don't forget, the Corey form that is done by the ABCC only does Massachusetts violations. So the application says, were you convicted? So my assumption would be that's why they do the fingerprinting.
But do your clients know whether they were fingerprinted in either Groton or
I
Chelmsford?
don't know. Do you remember, Eric, if you were fingerprinted?
For Chelmsford, no, and the Groton, I don't remember.
Yeah.
I
I
mean,
mean, it's not a requirement of Massachusetts law that you're fingerprinted. It's an option for a community to opt into, which Wakefield has.
Right. No, I understand that, but
So-
I guess I'm just saying, that I don't know how much stock I necessarily put in what other communities are doing, especially when they're not following the same kind of, they're not engaging the same due diligence that we are as a community.
Well, I think the purpose of dealing with, referencing Groton in Chelmsford, and especially Groton, is it's a 5-year track record. It's 2013 that he's been involved in the business
That's when
there,
I read
that has had no issues whatsoever. And, that's the purpose of that letter. Chelmsford is a year, so I get that, but there's also no issues there. So I would ask the council to focus on what's been going on in this young man's life who's recently married and operating successful businesses. What's going on in his life for the past 5 years, not what went on when he was 16 years old, to discuss that and air that out, with all due respect.
Okay, Chief, did you have comments for tonight?
I do.
Okay, did you want to come up?
Sure.
I have to give my perspective.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
after the chief, I do want to speak.
Oh, I'm sorry, yeah, okay.
That's fine.
Oh, no, I'll bring you back in, Paul.
That's fine.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Before I start, I have a question from Mr. Mullen. I've just become aware that there's a number of documents that have been floating back and forth here between this board and Mr. McGrail that I have not seen. Therefore, Mr. Mullen, if those documents were sent by Mr. McGrail to this board as part of their packet tonight, is that public record?
Yeah, I believe they would be public records.
Okay, thank you. That helps me. I'm going to start following what Mr. McGrail talked about earlier. My job, as spelled out in the bylaw, is to make a recommendation based on our investigation to the suitability of a client. And it says that right on the form. It talks about suitability. And one of those questions is, has the investigation been, let me read it to you. Any other crimes that may bear on suitability. We talk about the OUI in South Dakota, in Wyoming, as reported by South Dakota, which was his home state. The record that we have and that we've shared says multiple incidents. There's been no determination that there has not been multiple.
There has though, Chief.
I'm sorry?
It's the rest, there has been, the only thing in South Dakota is one OUI or Wyoming, I'm getting them confused, and then because of the reciprocity and how they report it, it's coming up as multiple. Unless you're calling Mr. McGrail a liar, I have a problem with you even going into detail, and you know I support you and I support your men and women 1,000%, but you should be able to do is give a recommendation, not go point by point through this, what we've already been through. I have a...
Mr. Chairman, can I continue?
Sure, good.
Thank you. And I'm going to go point by point because I think it's important that this board hears what I have to say and how our department based our position on these two people, these two gentlemen are here today. We don't know what happened in Wyoming, and we don't know what happened in South Dakota, but we have a record from the department, from South Dakota Department of Transportation that says that there's multiple incidents. Now, I have no idea who Mr. McGrail spoke to. I have no idea if that person that Mr. McGrail spoke to had the authority or the ability to research records. We have a record that you have a record that I'm hearing about tonight. Reciprocity fails. There could be another OUI out there. We don't know that. But the state of South Dakota is saying that there's multiple OUIs. Having said that, when Lieutenant Reveille had his conversation with, I'm getting the names mixed up here. With Alvaro. Lieutenant Reveille specifically asked Alvaro if he had a Massachusetts driver's license. Alvaro said, no, he did not. The lieutenant said to him, why? And Alvaro said, I've only been in the state a couple of months. Well, subsequent to that, utility records show, I'm sorry, a couple of weeks. Utility records show that Alvaro has actually been in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts for more than a couple of weeks. In fact, it was 3 months. So my question is, why did he answer in that way? I'm here to determine a number of things. One of them is suitability. So when I talk about Alvaro, He just got his driver's license today. Congratulations. I wonder why we've waited so long, and then why was he not truthful with us when we had to go and look at utility records to prove that he was less than truthful. And part of the responsibility of me is to share with you what I find, and it seems to be, because of this incident, a lack of character and trustworthiness. And when we're in this business of serving alcohol, character, trustworthiness, and integrity determines a lot. It means a lot. And I, as your police chief, take a lot of credence in character, integrity, and trustworthiness. Yes, if he can't answer the question when asked by a police department lieutenant honestly, he knows how long he's been in the Commonwealth. That's troubling to me. That's troubling to me, and it makes it more difficult for me to come in front of this council and say, thumbs up or thumbs down. When I come in front of this council, I'm troubled by what he told our lieutenant. And I think we deserve to hear the truth. You don't move into the Commonwealth 3 months ago and think you've been living here for 3 weeks. I'm sorry. That's the way I feel about it. Therefore, based on what Alvaro told us, I feel he's unsuitable for this license. Now we'll flip over. We want to talk about Eric. There are some issues that are troubling here. Chicago PD, let me back up a little bit, by the way. I can't back up?
No, I'm just a little bit disgusted, but that's
Mr.
okay.
Chairman, if I could just ask, just for clarification.
Sure, go
Respectfully,
ahead.
I'm sorry to interrupt
Go ahead,
you, but
Brian.
if
Go
the
ahead.
council, before the chief gets into any detail on my client, if he's going to do that, I think the council, it would be appropriate for the council to determine if it's something that they want to hear, because I posed an issue to the council if it's even appropriate to discuss any of the detail. And if it is, then I would like to address it. But instead of, because otherwise, my request is going to be a moot request if that happens. So I think that, with all due respect, that needs to be determined before anything goes any further, because perhaps the council has reviewed things and is agreeing with me that there is no detail warranted here, based on what I presented. And that would be, and if you do, then I would request that I can continue my presentation.
And I would request a public record, and I request that I be allowed to finish my presentation. I did not have a conversation, I did not interrupt Mr. McGrail. We had a conversation outside of here, and I think this council should hear from what the police department said. You've asked me by bylaw, I have power by bylaw to make a recommendation, and I think it's only fair for the people of the town of Wakefield that I make that recommendation and have that opportunity. It's public record. You all have documents that I have not seen.
So what's your recommendation, chief? Because I don't think it's going to change. You're going to find Eric not suitable as well?
I think what I'd like to hear is the chief does have a responsibility to this town to make a recommendation. I'm assuming it's an
I
informed
agree.
one, and I'd like to know the basis for your recommendation.
Right, but we have all the basis. We
I
have
don't
all
know
the information.
I know the basis for what my opinion is. I don't know what the basis is for the chief's recommendation or the police department's recommendation. I'd like to hear that. I don't know what it is.
Hold on one second. Hold on. Tom, Steve, you want to weigh in on this too? This is somewhat detailed. Do you have any thoughts on?
Well, my
just-
belief is that it's within the council's discretion whether to go into this or not. With respect to the manager, Section 205-3Q of your regulation says that you have to determine whether he has a character that is satisfactory to the council. That's a very broad question. With respect to the licensee, Mr. McGrail is correct that your regulations mirror state law and say that the licensee cannot have been convicted of a federal or state narcotics law. I don't read that, however, as meaning that you are limited necessarily to asking about that. So my bottom line is I think you would be acting legally in either deciding to have a vote now and cut off further discussion, or entertaining discussion from everybody before you and educating yourselves as fully as you want.
Okay, so we're at kind of a crossroad here. So Brian's point is well taken as well as the chief's. I mean, Brian doesn't feel it's necessary to continue on. I think the town council, we should vote on this, just, yeah, we should decide right now, before we're at a crossroad. We shouldn't be opening it up beyond this if the town council doesn't want to do that. So I think that we're in the right to decide now before we move further. Does that make sense? Maybe not as eloquent as it could be, but I think that because everything will come out that Brian's willing to talk to too, but he also wants to be able to not necessarily put all that information on the streets because no one else has needed to do that. So just to be fair with all the other restaurant liquor establishments in town.
So you're asking for a motion for the vote or the motion for us to not?
I think we should have a motion to decide if we should continue the conversation and point by point from the chief or not. I think we need to decide. Ed, go ahead.
I mean, if there were fingerprinting issues that came up with anyone looking for a liquor license, I would expect the same sort of due diligence to be happening now. So this has nothing to do with this, you know, and as much as Attorney McGrell may want something, that's not what this is about. This is about, we have a respected member of our community, the chief of police, who is, you know, by law, our law, mandated to make a recommendation to us, and I assume it's a reasoned recommendation. I'd like to know why that is. And I think that everyone watching or reading about this, or for any reason, you know, curious about it, has a right to understand the basis for the police chief's recommendation. I don't understand why we're trying to, you know, quell any sort of discussion about this. If you have, please, Chief, if you have reasons, I want to know them. I don't just want to have you say yay or nay. Why the mystery?
Mr. Chair.
Sure, Paul.
My whole thing on this right now is my take on this. If any further discussion is given on this, I want Mr. McGreal to speak first, because he was the one who initiated his first question to us. Do we have any reason to go into the discussion in detail? No one said yes. Not one. Until the chief sat down. And then all of a sudden, people want to go into detail. If we give anyone the first shot at this, I want Mr. McGreal to get the first shot because he initiated a request for us. So if we're going to go through that whole thing,
right,
I think that you give the applicant the opportunity to speak first, like we always do, before we bring anyone else in. And then the council gets to speak before anyone else.
But we don't even know the reasons that the chief is going to offer.
Then let Mr.
So how do we-
McGreal, let Mr. McGreal, because you want to go into detail now, Ed. I'm not saying that you're wrong. I'm agreeing with you, right. But it's Mr. McGreal's presentation that I think should come first.
You're assuming that the reasons that Mr. McGrail, or the issues he's going to raise, are the same as the concerns the chief has. I don't know what the chief's concerns even are.
I'm not even saying that. I'm saying that if
Well, you
we're-
are,
if
because
we're
you're
looking
saying
for-
that-
If we're looking for detail, he said he'd go through step by.
I'm not looking for detail. I'm looking for the basis for the chief's recommendation, and I don't know what that is. I'd like to have him go through it. If Mr. McGrail wants to address the particular incidents that are in this packet, that's fine, but I don't think we can assume that they're one and the same. I don't know that.
Okay. I'm not disagreeing with you.
So
Yeah, we-
just a process question. So
Sure.
Chief, you didn't get the materials that we got. So it's hard to hear a presentation when he doesn't actually have the same materials that we have.
Right.
So there's a process mess up, and we should, it's hard to listen when not everyone has the same information.
So, a couple more choices. Do we need to postpone this? Is that what we're saying? If
Mr.
everyone
Chairman.
doesn't have all the information? Brian?
If I may.
Sure.
Okay. My client has nothing to hide, okay? Everything has been submitted to your board in the form of records from the city of Chicago, from the state of Illinois, in the form of affidavits by my client, which are public record. So we're not, I want everyone to know, and people that might be watching, we're not looking to hide anything. If you want to go down to town hall, you can read the whole thing tomorrow morning by going to the town administrator's office. My main point here is that it's pretty clear from the fingerprint bylaw what the goal is, as I stated. The goal is for the police department to indicate whether the applicant has been, in the chief reference to, has been convicted or is under pending indictment for a crime that bears upon his or her suitability or any felony or misdemeanor involved, force or threat of force, controlled substances, or sex-related offense. With that said, I appreciate Councilor Denoco's comment and Councilor Butt. I'm happy to go into the detail. I'll do it right now. But I would like to do that before the chief would do that, because we have explanations on these things that I would like to do. So if I may, I'll proceed, because this is something that I think is pretty straightforward, and we'd like to resolve tonight, and to do that without continuing it. And it's becoming pretty evident to me that I don't think I'll be able to do that unless I present these things in detail in the public, which I'm happy to do at this point.
Do you want to move the question? Is that what you're?
Yeah, I actually want to move, I want to make the motion that we allow the full liquor license, because I understand what Chief Smith is going to say, and I think he's going to come out also not in support of the other gentleman, which isn't going to change my mind based on all the facts that I have in being a prosecutor and in supporting the cops every turn. I'm still not troubled by what I have seen. So I don't know if going into all of these, the detail that we all have on the council, and we are the ones that make this decision for most of us, whether that will change the ultimate votes. So I make a motion that we allow the full liquor license.
Second.
Paul?
Just for point of order, Mr. Mayor, when was this packet sent out to us regarding all of Mr. McGreal's information?
Some of it was Friday, and today was the other. The redacted portions were today.
We didn't get the redacted till today.
And which part of that was the react? What did we get today? Which part of it?
The redacted part of it.
So between what's on our screen right now and everything that we were printed out, that should...
Two different.
Two different things. But the main body that is in this document here was given to us in our packet. This is what I pulled off of the...
Out of Friday's email?
Yes. Yeah. Right, so this is... So the chief should have gotten this as well.
Well, yeah, I guess so.
Any other comments, Ed?
I mean, we're talking about, we're for the cops. Yeah, we're support the cops. We also support the residents of town. But I think the bottom line is we're trying to silence our police chief before he even says, what he's recommending, and two, the reasons why he's doing it. I don't know what information he has. Just because we have certain information, that doesn't mean that the chief has the same information we have. I don't know. Maybe you do, Chief. Maybe it's identical to what we have. Maybe it's different. Maybe there are other reasons that have nothing to do with the information presented to us. But I don't understand why it is that we're trying to dance around, the chief being able to make a recommendation to us and then tell us the reasons why. Why would we do that?
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
I don't mean to influence you one way or the other, but on the question of the chief's role here, I would note that it's a little broader than has been represented. It is true that your regulations, that the bylaw says, police department shall indicate whether the applicant's been convicted of or is under pending indictment for a crime that bears upon his or her suitability, or any felony or misdemeanor that involve force or the threat of force, controlled substances, or a sex-related offense. But it also says the police department shall, in addition, render to the licensing authority its evaluation of the applicant's suitability for the proposed occupational activity based upon the results of the criminal records background check and any other relevant information known to it. And in rendering its evaluation, the police department shall consider all applicable laws, regulations, and town policies bearing on an applicant's suitability. Again, I think legally you can go either way, but I want you to understand that the chief has a broader role here than just reciting whether there's been a conviction of a felony.
Any other comments, questions? So we have a motion to move the liquor license for tequila on the floor, and it's already seconded, right? So, comments? Sure.
Yeah, but I think that it was irresponsible of this body to not at least consider the recommendation of our chief of police. Chief, no offense, but I might not even agree with your recommendation. I don't know. But I at least would like to know how you arrived at the point you did, or how the police department did, because the bottom line is, at 1 a.m., if there are issues, it's not gonna be this town council that's gonna be going to deal with them. It's the men and women that are part of your department that are gonna be doing that. So I am very interested in knowing what concerns you have and why you have them. And I think trying to silence you in this process feels really inappropriate.
This is a tough one.
So just to clarify again, Peter, we've already approved the liquor license.
Correct.
So according to our agenda, this is a manager and owner update. So I don't know, I actually don't, we don't have to revote on it. This was just, according to our agenda, we've already approved the liquor license, right?
That's right. Subject to fingerprinting.
Right.
Which is now opened up.
Which usually it's the other order, so it's usually done first, what I remember. Is that correct? It's usually done first.
Frankly,
No, it's always.
No?
The
So a second?
fingerprinting should have happened before we approved this to begin with. I mean, if we have as a general practice all of this done in advance, including fingerprinting and all that, then it's a one and done. Someone comes before us, we have all the information. Here we don't, so it was contingent upon the fingerprinting. Now the fingerprinting has opened up issues. That's where we're at. I think going forward, as from a process perspective, it makes a whole lot more sense for us to have done all of these things, to do all of these, make sure all these boxes are checked, and then have it come before town council, so we eliminate these problems in the future. However, we're presented with what we are now, and I think that it's important that we get the input of the chief of police for our town.
Mr. Chair, I'd be willing to postpone our decision and have the chief be able to review the documents and give us in writing his opinions for us to review in order to make any further establishment. But I don't think I want to go into great detail of that now unless Mr. McGrail is afforded the same opportunity. So the motion on the floor right now is to approve it right now. And if that stands, I'm going to have to vote in favor of moving the motion right now, because I think that both parties are being neglected, not just the chief, if we don't. So I'm just making my 2 cents out here right now, that unless both parties are afforded to review and make comments, that I'm voting with the motion.
So we'd have to withdraw the motion.
I withdraw
No.
my motion and say, get it over
Second.
with tonight. These people have been waiting to open their restaurant. They're ready to open. I don't want to put it off another 2 weeks if the ultimate vote might be in favor of them. So if that means we hear from Chief Smith about why he does or does not support it, and then Mr. McGrail can counter.
Well, actually, Brian, I think Brian had a good point to, I think we should have Brian, and Paul mentioned it as well. Brian, if we're going to go into this, then Brian should probably finish up, and then Chief will give you the second round on that. I think if we're going to go into it. I agree, 2 weeks is a long time, and the restaurant, you're losing money every day you're not there.
Yeah, and so
So-
thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the council. I didn't mean to get things sidetracked.
Sure.
It was a legitimate consideration. And, and if you deem it necessary, as I said at the opening, that I go forward with this in detail, we will. And I'm prepared to do that right now. So, if I may,
I think we should just proceed, because I
Happy
think
to
there's
do
too
that
many
at this
conflicts,
point.
right, on both sides, and to be fair to both sides, right. Thanks, Brian.
okay, so as I mentioned, I've already covered Alvaro, and I will tell you, I've been practicing law for almost 30 years in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. I'm licensed in good standing. I have multiple phone calls with the folks in South Dakota. I've submitted a copy of the South Dakota driving record that shows only the Wyoming defenses, that is the only thing. And he has signed another affidavit under the pains and penalties of perjury that is the only OUI or DWI offense that he has had. So that's where we stand with him. As far as Eric is concerned, as I mentioned, Eric had ordinance violations and/or arrests in the city of Chicago in the years 2000, 2001, 2005, and 2007. The arrest in 2000 related to causing damage to the property in the form of a church bus that was abandoned on a city parking lot with a group of people throwing rocks. That occurred when Eric was, this is Eric, 16.
15.
You sure? I calculated 16, so it happened, I calculated 16, he's saying 15, okay, approximately. So that is that incident. That's what the report that was submitted in Exhibit D, subject taken into custody after being positively identified on the scene by Agent Cintron after he observed subject throwing rocks at a church bus, breaking windows and dents and scratches. Okay? It's very important to note that that was resolved with the system, the court system, with an informal adjustment and a release to his parents. It was as was stated in the police report. I have done research in the state of Illinois, in juvenile court. There is something that is called an informal adjustment. There are two types of adjustments. There's informal or formal, and it is not, although they're not convictions, it says station adjustments usually appear on the juvenile's history, which I think is why it is showing up here. Under the statutes, it references station adjustments, and it goes on and says an informal station adjustment does not constitute an adjudication of delinquency or a criminal conviction. So that is incident number one that occurred in 2000. Incident in 2001 was an arrest, and I think you were 16 at this time, right? Relating to a horrific incident that occurred with Eric's two dogs and another younger dog. Eric was 16 at the time, lived with both of his parents, and owned two pit bull dogs. Eric was charged, as they referred to as sport fighting. And what happened was a dog was in front of Eric's house, and his two pit bulls attacked this dog. It was a young dog, it was a puppy, it was injured pretty significantly. And we have answered that in the form of an affidavit that we submitted in your Exhibit E. And this is the explanation, if I may, Mr. Chairman, read this into the record from Eric. Statement of Eric Brambilla. I, Eric Brambilla, hereby represent and state the following to the Wakefield Town Council related to all alcohol license for property at 979 Main Street, Wakefield. 1, I was arrested in 2001 and charged with owning a dog for sport fighting and causing criminal damage. 2, although I owned two pit bulls in 2001, I owned them as pets and not for dog sport fighting. 3, I never participated in dog sport fighting in any way, shape, or form. 4, the arrest report for this 2001 matter represents a victim's puppy that was stolen. I do not have anything to do whatsoever with anyone's puppy being taken or stolen. 5, when this incident occurred, I was sleeping in my parents' house and I was awakened to dog noise, commotion, and my mother screaming outside my house. I ran outside the house where I found my two dogs attacking a smaller dog. I did everything within my power to prevent the attack from continuing, and I succeeded in that regard. 6, I believe the puppy unfortunately wandered from its owner, ended up in front of my parents' house, and my dogs attacked it. 7, after this incident occurred, my mother required me to give up ownership of my two dogs, which I did. 8, I have never and would never do anything to cause harm to an animal. 9, I've always been an animal lover and very protective of animals. I, in fact, am currently own two French bulldogs that are both an intricate part of my family. So that is that matter. That also resulted in an informal adjustment, the same as the last one, and Eric was released to his parents, 16 years old. Eric, do you want to address the council on that at all? Do you give them any insight on, is what I stated accurate?
Yes, I was sleeping, it was like 6 in the morning, and that was the first thing, I was sleeping and I hear my mom screaming. I'm like, I don't know if I was dreaming or something. I woke up, she's really like screaming for real. I go outside and my two dogs were, I don't even think they were attacking this small dog, because pit bulls, they attack, they're not gonna let go. And the lady, she was freaking out and she said that I was fighting the dogs, which was like 6 in the morning.
Did you help get the dogs off?
Yes, I just called them and they came right back in, and like.
Okay.
And I was for sport fighting, which.
So that's the 2001 incident where Eric was 16. Number 3 was an arrest in 2005 for an ordinance of soliciting unlawful business. The disposition of this matter was a non-suit, which I understand to mean that no formal charges were pursued. It's a no pros equivalent in Illinois. Eric was 19 years old at this time. The police report is really vague on this. That's all it states, soliciting unlawful business. There's nothing else on it. And we attached that as Exhibit C. I'm sorry, Exhibit E. I apologize. We also, if I may, hold on one second. I apologize, that's Exhibit F. And that was a non-suit disposition that occurred in June of 2005. Eric was 19 at the time, and I also submitted a detailed affidavit that was signed by Eric in this regard. I'd like to read this into the record because you see unlawful business, you say, what was this all about? We've already discussed the type of neighborhood that Eric grew up in and was raised in. And this states, I, Eric Brambilla, hereby represent and state the following to the Wakefield Town Council related to all alcohol license for property situated at 979 Main Street, Wakefield, Massachusetts. 1, I was arrested in 2005 and charged with something called soliciting unlawful business. 2, at the time of this arrest, I lived in the section of Chicago where gang activity was prevalent and crime rate was high. 3, at the time of this arrest, I was standing in front of my house with my cousins and friends when a police car drove by us and then turned around and returned. 4, the police officer asked what we were doing and we informed him we were just hanging out. 5, the police officer told us we should not be doing that. We were taken to the police station and we did not understand why at that time. 6, I want to be clear that I was not soliciting any business at the time of this arrest, and specifically and without limitation, I was not soliciting business for drugs of any sort. That's signed under the pains and penalties of perjury by Eric, and as I mentioned, this was also resulted in a non-suit or a non-conviction. Arrest in 2007, which was the final one. Eric was just turned 21 for a misdemeanor of reckless conduct. The disposition of this matter was stricken off with leave to reinstate. And as I mentioned, Eric was 21 at the time. We have submitted the police report on this. And Eric has also submitted an affidavit in this respect. I, Eric Brambilla, hereby represent and state the following to Wakefield Town Council related to an all-alcohol license for property situated at 979 Main Street, Wakefield, Massachusetts. 1, I was arrested in 2007 and charged with reckless conduct. This involved a spray painting incident. Specifically, I was present when a friend of mine at the time was spray painting graffiti. Although I was not performing the spray painting, I regret being present and having anything to do with this incident whatsoever. Again, this did not result in any conviction whatsoever. If you look at the listings in the state of Illinois, under dismissals and acquittals are listed, number 1, a finding of not guilty. Number 2, stricken off with leave to reinstate, which that one was. And number 3, non-suit or no pros. So those are what those were. They're categorized as dismissals or acquittals. So that's the that's really kind of the mystery. That's what we got. And I'd like to make a statement. Eric's humbled. He's uncomfortable and not proud to have any of these matters even mentioned in the same sentence as his name, especially since he was never convicted, and in fact, not even prosecuted for any of these items. As far as he's concerned, they're a lifetime ago, 10 to 15 years ago. As mentioned in one of Eric's affidavits, he grew up in a very difficult neighborhood, to say the least. He persevered. He's become a successful, recently married. His wife Cassandra is here tonight, out the back. Hi, Cassandra. In support of him, he's a successful businessman, and he would like to get on his life. Him and Alvaro would like to open, hopefully, what is deemed to be a successful business in the town of Wakefield. I'd like to stress these matters were not disclosed during the application process because it was not required that they would be disclosed. As a matter of fact, they weren't even thought about or contemplated. Because of that fact. We have provided what I think is the true character aspect of what's going on with him now, which is the letters from Groton and Chelmsford. We're here to answer any questions. We will stay here all night. Eric is available to answer questions directly. He will not hide behind his attorney, and neither will Alvaro. So we welcome questions directly to them without me interceding. I will sit back and just watch them answer the questions. That's how confident I am in both of these gentlemen. So,
I think if you all agree, I think the town council would probably like to hear the chief, unless, it's just to get one story. I think the delivery was great, Brian. I think it's very informative from past and present and future. It's very important to hear that story, which we needed to hear. But I think if no one
and I
has any
respect
objections.
that. I do respect that.
Yeah,
So,
if everyone, no one has any objections, I think the chief, just to finish up the second part and then move on to a vote. Chief.
Chair, I would, first of all, like to request a copy of the documents that the council has. I haven't seen them, so I can't comment on letters from Chelmsford or Groton. If I had those in my possession and I knew about these prior business deals, I certainly would have been able to contact the chiefs and the police departments, and the respective police departments, to find out the level of activity, calls for service, types of calls for service, to the establishments you're talking about. Right now, I have no information. I'm operating blind on that. And I think in fairness, I should be able to look at those and have an opportunity to digest them. And I would suggest going forward that items that are going to come to this council and issues like this should be forwarded to me so that I can complete my investigation. You give me a job to do, I'm going to do it, and I'm going to do it to the best of my ability. But if I have one hand tied behind my back, I can't do my job. So, having said that, I'm going to go through in the same order as Mr. McGrail. I have in my possession the arrest report from the City of Chicago Police Department. So let's talk about Eric's first event with the South Chicago Pentecostal Church as a juvenile. The way this was handled appears to be the way that anyone would handle a juvenile event. The thing that troubles me is he was arrested. He was brought into the Chicago District Station, and he was released to his parents. One of the issues that bothers me the most is what we just heard was he was woken up at 6:30 in the morning, when in fact it happened at 7:30 at night. Second piece of that.
I'm sorry, Chief, which incident are you on?
The first.
The first one, I
With
thought
the church,
he was
the-
woken up at 6:30 in the morning with the dogs. That's what the gentleman said.
Well, that one actually happened at 9:29.
That's
at
correct.
night.
That's correct. Let me back up. You know that one. But, okay, so let me go back and let's talk about the destruction to the church property. The issue here is that he was arrested and brought in. He wasn't brought in, he wasn't asked to come in, he wasn't guided in, he was arrested and brought into the station. That, to me, as a career law enforcement officer, tells me something. It tells me that there's a little bit more to this. But it's not uncommon for a child to be released to their parents and pretty much make them aware of what's going on, and hopefully they'll correct their behavior. The next incident is the dog incident. And as I said and misspoke before, the dog incident troubles me, because if he was woken up at 6:30 in the morning, why is the arrest date and time 21:20? 21:20 is 9:30 at night. But the report from Chicago PD states that the dog had been stolen approximately 15 minutes before. The fight breaks out. The dog is seriously injured. The neighbor's dog is seriously injured. In my experience as a police officer, dog fighting, this is how dogs are trained to fight. Dogs are brought in, they can't fight, to teach the dog how to fight. It's a very big business, it's a very lucrative business, and it's a very common business in environments like this. I will gladly speak to the fact that this is obviously not the best neighborhood that somebody could be brought up in. But I find I have a police report from the city of Chicago that tells me that that dog was stolen 15 minutes before. Then the dog is used as a training tool to train pit bulls how to fight. Cruelty to animals, he was charged respectively, he was arrested, and again, a juvenile released. The charges are troubling because according to the arrest charges in the city of Chicago, the charges are owning an animal for sport fight. There's a big difference than having an animal that engages in a sport fight. You own an animal. And it's my belief, judging from what I read here, that the story is a little bit different than what was presented a little earlier. Now, let's move on to the criminal defacement issue. We just heard from counsel of the criminal defacement. And the writing on the wall and spray painting and whatnot. According to the police report from the violence suppression team, Chicago PD, while on routine patrol, the defendants were observed spray painting a garage above a residence with a can of black spray paint, while the other offender was throwing garbage cans in the alley. Both suspects were placed into custody and Mirandized. They were taken to the station to be booked. Spray painting on the back of the buildings was consistent with other spray painting in the area. The spray paint was black. They found black spray paint cans in custody. The description of the graffiti is as follows. Now bear in mind, this patrol is a gang patrol, and their job is to go out and gather gang evidence and to formulate that into wherever it takes them. At 8757 South Muskegon, on the rear door, the word hoodlum. On the side door, V111. Then an asterisk in V111 again. At 8733 South Muskegon, the word hoodlum. At 8731 South Muskegon, the initials PWS, HS, then letters VPVLKK, and a picture with an upside-down crown. In the gang world, in the street gang world, these are all symbols. These are all words or letters that's...
I think we're going so far above. I know what I get their gang symbols, but
But they don't. The rest of the council doesn't.
I know,
and the
but
council
does
is
the rest of
asking for me to explain it.
But I
so
feel
give
like
me
you're
the courtesy
going, you know
of
what,
speaking.
Chief, I give you a lot of courtesy, but I am feeling like this is going so far beyond what we do. It
Mr.
is
Chairman?
making me embarrassed.
Chief, you have to continue. Go ahead, finish.
I'm sorry, you say
Definitely
continue?
continue.
Thank you. The letters, the language, everything that I've explained here is typical of gang behavior. These are all ways that the gangs communicate. They're sprayed on walls. They're sprayed on walls to determine turf, or to influence turf, or to tell other gangs in the area that there's a message out there, whether it's a hit, whether it's drug activity, or whatever it may be. They all have a meaning, and none of the meaning is good. The last thing is most troubling to me. It's the upside-down crown. This gang that's working in this area was known as the Latin Dragons. The Latin Dragons is one of the largest street gangs in the city of New York, city of Chicago. One of the larger gangs that the city of Chicago has to deal with. It also is at war with another gang called the Latin Kings. The Latin King sign is a crown upside, straight up, with the points up. When a gang member or somebody writes graffiti on a wall and inverts that crown, it's a challenge. So what we have, these people in that alley that night causing a disturbance, the Latin Dragons were basically calling the Latin Kings out. To me, conviction or not, that is not good behavior. It is bad behavior. It indicates character, integrity, truthfulness to me. Additionally, these cases are basically what we call in Massachusetts continue without a finding. That's not a conviction, but it's not a sign of innocence. What it does is continue without a finding is just that. It's continue without a finding pending your future behavior. Continue without a finding can have an end date. It does have an end date on it. And lastly, the last case that we're talking about is another investigation by the gang unit, Chicago PD, during an operation, this district gang tactical unit during an operation Just Cause for drinking on a public way and unlawful solicitation on that public way. The arresting officers aren't really needed here. In summary, while on patrol in the area of the arrest in response to Operation Just Cause against the Latin Dragon Street Gang, observed the offenders at the address flagging down vehicles and passers-by while shouting weed, a street term for cannabis. Said actions performed by offenders 4 and 5 were taken in the furtherance of illegal narcotics transactions and done in such a manner as to impede the normal flow of traffic. Offenders were also observed drinking from 12-ounce bottles labeled Corona beer and alcoholic beverage on the public way. All subjects were placed into custody, read their rights per Miranda. Offenders were transported to the 4th District Station, charged accordingly. Offender 1 was in possession of $458 in United States currency. Again, what Mr. McGrail says is true about guilty and not guilty and convictions. But as we've talked about tonight, I also have the opportunity and a responsibility to report back to you, to this board, to this council, about character, integrity, and trustworthiness. In my opinion and my recommendation is that a license does not be granted because I question, as your police chief, the character, integrity, and their trustworthiness based on the reports I have in hand from the City of Chicago Police Department. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Chief. I think it was very important to hear both sides, even though both sides had reasons to not want all the information out or not deem it necessary. But I think it's important for the public to hear both sides fully, not just abbreviated versions. Any other comments, discussion points, just to move? Ed?
I guess just one thing, Eric, in hearing this, and again, I understand that you've been arrested, you've not been convicted, so I recognize the difference here. My concern is less about what happened when it did, and more about your ownership of what happened today, if that makes sense, because I think that's really what that's the germane question here. You know, so based on what the chief says, do you have any response to anything that he's represented to us?
Yeah, growing up over there, it's really, really tough. Like, police, they'll pick on you just to have everybody out the street. So half of the stuff in the reports, I'm not gonna go against it or whatever, but it's BS from the Chicago. I don't know if you ever seen on TV, but South Chicago, there's like murders like every few hours. Police, they're like on it. They don't want nobody in the street.
So I guess what I want to ask is, are you owning any responsibility that the chief has implied, or are you saying that what he has said is not accurate?
Half of it is not accurate. I'm not gonna say everything's a lie. No, I'll take it, but I want to say like 50% is the truth from the reports.
Ian, good.
If there was as much substance to all of these incidents, there wouldn't be 4 dismissals. There wouldn't be 4 continuing without a findings. I was a prosecutor. I prosecuted Latin Kings. You're not going to give someone a quaff as a chance, and then a few years later, they don't get another quaff. They get a conviction. So from my experience, all of the null process, I'm not saying, you know, Eric had a life that probably had some missteps in it, no doubt. But the fact that they're dismissals and acquittals and not prosecuted, some of them not even prosecuted, is huge in my mind. And I just feel like the recitation of all the details, I hope when reported, that is also, you know, I hope it's not reported in such detail, but if it is, these don't concern me as a former prosecutor, as a town councilor, as someone who doesn't want our police to get hurt, as someone who has children in the community.
Tony?
No, I would just like to make a motion that we vote on the question.
Okay, just before we do that, anyone else? Paul, did you want to say something, Paul?
2 questions and
Sure.
then 1 comment.
Sure, sure.
When was the last time anything happened that you were arrested right now? When was the last time, Eric, when was the last time you were arrested?
When I was 20.
20, so how many years is that, 13? For you?
13, 14, yeah.
Okay, and as far as you, Mario, how long ago?
4 years.
4 years. Okay. Have both of you had clean records in the last, since then?
Yes.
Okay, so in the 2 businesses that we have in front of us reflecting messages from Groton and from Chelmsford, how long have you owned those establishments?
Groton, I opened in 13, and the Chelmsford, I just opened it 17.
Okay, so did you make mistakes in the past?
Yes.
Are you sorry for those mistakes?
Oh, yes, I am.
Would you ever repeat those
No,
mistakes?
no.
Okay, so here's my comment, okay? I've read these, and maybe at some point in time, should this board or council say, yes, we're going to give you, I want to be able to write one of these. But on the flip side of that, and I already told your attorney this, that if you come in here for 1 offense, okay, within, let's say, the next 2 years, I wouldn't blink an eye with putting a request in to pull your permit completely. I mean, because when we want a restaurant in the town, we're actually looking for a restaurant that's going to bring something to the community, okay? I want that to be perfect, okay, with that. And it's with any restaurant that comes into the town, okay? We've had instances in the past. Right now, we don't want that to happen, so we want to make sure that all establishments are aware of it. Now, we're going to be making sure that that happens, because the chief said that he will be doing that at some point in time.
Yes.
Okay, so I just want to make sure of that one thing, and that's all I have to say at this point.
Any other comments or discussion? I found this really very, very emotional testimony, and I think that both sides needed to come out, and I think that both gentlemen, their backgrounds growing up, not there's an excuse for bad behavior or the things that happened in the past. I think that going forward, it's not a good thing just to have feelings, right? But I think going forward, you've already proven on the recent track record, as Paul indicated, that things are cleaned up, so to speak. And I think that I would vote for finishing up the liquor license process. And as Paul mentioned as well, just be very careful about everything going forward. I think you already have some other establishments that are doing well, and correspondence all indicates that. But it's really critical to, as Paul mentioned as well, to not be back here for a legitimate reason. Some people get called in. We had other establishments in the recent past, the last year, a couple restaurants, pubs that came in, and one was pretty clear they did the right thing right away. The other one was a little questionable. But when it's not your fault, it's one thing. But just really try to move forward. We'll see what the rest of the town council wants to do. But I think it's you're worthy of giving you a chance here. So any other comments, or Ed?
I just wanted to thank you, Chief, too. I mean, we have charged you with this responsibility, and I thank you for doing it. I thank you for doing your due diligence and bringing it before us. And that's an important piece to all of this. You know, you don't have a vested interest in this outcome either way. Your vested interest is the safety of your officers and the community at large, and I recognize that. And when you have hesitations and concerns, I share those. I recognize that, and I share that with the police department. I do think, given the passage of time and the fact that I think it's very clear to you both that you are on notice, that you're starting at perhaps a different spot than a lot of other businesses, in that we haven't had this fingerprint issue, at least in my experience, then I think vigilance is going to be absolutely critical for your business, because you realize you perhaps fairly or unfairly will be a bit under more of a microscope, I think, as a result of your starting point. But thank you, Chief, for what you're doing, because I think what you do is important here, and it needs to be recognized.
Okay, do we have a motion on the floor?
We do.
Do we do? Do we have a second on that? Okay, so, again, as Marion would say, just to reiterate then, the motion on the floor is to approve, finish up the liquor license process for tequila and grant the license going forward. Is that correct? Correct me if I'm wrong. So,
The motion should be for us to issue the license.
issue the license. Okay, so the motion on the floor is to issue the license for Tequila's Restaurant. And all in favor? Okay, 7-0, unanimous. Okay, thank you for both coming in tonight.
Thank you.
Chief, thank you very much for your information as well. Thank you.
Appreciate your time. Thank you.
Absolutely, absolutely, yes. Thank you very much, Chief.
Thank you. Good luck.
Thanks, Brian.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Chief. I'd like,
Want to skip C for now and then go, some people are waiting out there, maybe get them.
sure. As a matter of fact, if you don't mind, Steve, I have to run to the boys' room on TV here. Because I can only wait so long. So, Tony, you want to just sit in for a minute, or there'll be more to watch on TV then?
Do I sit over there?
Sit wherever you want.
You can stay right there.
Sorry about the interruption.
So you want to take this out of order?
Yeah, I think maybe we should go to 5A.
Okay.
And then continue on, because there are people waiting.
So appointments, request to advertise the Municipal Gas and Light Department Commissioner due to a resignation of Bill Boudry.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Six.
Date, when we'd like those to be in,
Usually 2 weeks, right?
usually, yeah.
2 weeks.
That's what I like.
Isn't it
Yeah.
2 weeks, 3 weeks?
Yep.
So when would we have it?
That would be the 25th,
Yeah, but
obviously by that Friday.
We won't have it in time for the 25th.
So it'll be the
So it'll be the meeting after.
Okay,
Okay?
yeah.
Consider
The
it.
meeting in July, okay? Appointment to be in the meeting in July.
16th, yeah.
Is that okay?
Perfect. Is that
Okay.
That's perfect. Thank you, Sheriff.
Again, with committee appointments, Board of Appeals, we have 2 alternative openings. Daniel Benjamin, Gregory McIntosh, and Thomas Lucy. So we have a little bit of a discussion here.
I would move to appoint Gregory McIntosh to the Zoning Board of Appeals.
Julie?
I was going to move to appoint Daniel Benjamin to the Board of Appeals.
We're taking one at a time, right?
So the motion on the floor is to appoint Greg McIntosh to the Board of Appeals.
Need a second?
Second.
Second?
Discussion.
Any discussion?
I just think that in looking at the resumes, I like the fact that Mr. McIntosh brings, I think, unique experience to the position. He's also, I think he just brings some new blood, which would be a nice addition to the composition of the ZBA. And I think one of our goals going forward has been trying to diversify, the number of people we have. So we have, a lot of different names and a lot of different roles. So we have a lot of, different folks and new folks coming into the mix along with those more seasoned. So I think he would be a good complement to that composition.
Okay, so are we doing one at a time? Is
One at a
that
time.
Okay, good. So, all right, so we,
Moved and seconded.
okay, moved and second for who?
McIntosh.
Greg McIntosh.
Oh, okay, moved and seconded, okay. And no further discussion on that? Is that good? Okay, all in favor of Gregory McIntosh for the Board of Appeals for one of the two alternate openings? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, so that's, all opposed?
Nay.
One opposed?
One opposed.
Okay, Tony opposed.
Julie's.
Oh, okay.
I nominate Dan Benjamin.
Okay.
For the second position.
Second.
Second.
Discussion?
Discussion?
I like Dan very much. I respect Dan, but the third name on there, Tommy Lucy, who I'm going to nominate next, has been on the Board of Appeals, and I know has been a very yes? Has been, okay. Been on the Board of Appeals, has been a very valued member on the board, works in these kind of, this field, has done a ton of projects at Harvard University, has appeared before boards in Harvard, Cambridge, Arlington, all those surrounding cities, so is very well versed at how the board works. And he was just telling me, I saw him recently, that he thinks the Wakefield board is so thoughtful and so reasoned as to how it does its business and would like to continue. And so I just, I know that he's a valued member on that board. So not taking anything against Dan, but I just wanted to add that if Dan doesn't get placed, I'm going to be moving that we put Tom on.
Tony?
Dan has done a lot for the town, continues to do a lot for the town. He's on a lot of boards, and I think he is a very viable choice for this opportunity. Julie?
Oh, Julie.
No,
sorry.
I would just agree. I serve with him on the WCAT. I find him to be very thoughtful, very detail-oriented, and I think, taking nothing away from the other candidates at all, I think just, while he's been on a lot of boards, I think he has a really broad view of Wakefield and different needs, and will bring kind of a different voice. Maybe not a traditional voice to the board, but a different perspective.
Any other comments on Dan or Tom? No. Ed?
My understanding of the reputation of Mr. Lucy is that he's been a valued member of the ZBA, and I think that that's important. I have great respect for all that Dan Benjamin has done. I do think that his voice is heard in a number of different capacities within the town already, in the various positions that he has held and continues to hold. And so it sounds like, as much as we're bringing on someone new onto the ZBA, having someone, I mean, his resume is incredibly impressive in terms of the projects that he's done, and I think Ann has spoken to many of them, so I won't repeat. But the opportunity to have Mr. Lucy continue doing what I understand by all accounts to be very good work with the ZBA, I think it's very important, and I know that Dan is and will continue to be actively involved in the community as he sits on a lot of different, he wears a lot of different hats right now, but I think this hat, while it would fit Dan, is better suited for Mr. Lucy simply because of his background and experience here.
Can I just say one thing?
Sure.
The chairman of the Board of Appeals, who's out in the audience tonight, did contact me, and they do wish to retain Tom Lucy as a member.
Sure. Duly noted. Okay. All right. Should we take it on Dan?
No, did you have a motion for Dan on the floor?
You have a motion and a second.
Okay, motion and a second. Okay, so any further discussion on Dan before we vote? All in favor of appointing for the other alternate for the Board of Appeals, Dan Benjamin? Raise your hand. 3 noted. Okay.
I move that we appoint Tom Lucy as an alternate.
Okay, all in favor of appointing Tom Lucy for the second alternate opening for the Board of Appeals? Okay, so now we have,
Okay.
okay.
Can I just make a comment? Can we, I know we're still perfecting how we do these appointments.
Sure.
But if there's a way to get input from the chairs before, like we do for Human Rights Commission, that's helpful to get before, so we don't have to, if we had started the discussion with what Steve said, that would have been helpful. So going forward, it's great to get input from the chairs. It would have been nice for all of us
Sure.
to have that information, and we
Yeah.
do it with certain boards, and I know certain boards reach out to us individually, but I think if we can all have that information, it's
That's a great
helpful
idea.
before we
a great
appoint
idea.
people and have a discussion.
I haven't heard a lot of the input in the past, so I think it's a great idea. So if you mark that down. Okay, so we didn't do a council on aging, right? We didn't do-
Nope.
Okay. So next we have number 2 on the committee appointments. We have council on aging, 1 opening. Maureen Hickey, any
So moved.
Second.
any conversations? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Hearing none. Okay, for the Permanent Building Committee, another one with just one alternate opening. Do I have any motion on the floor?
Motion to appoint John McDonald as the alternate.
Any second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All right. All opposed? Cultural Council.
Move the slate. Motion to move the slate.
Second.
Any discussion on that? For moving second?
Andy Levine and Sarah Madeline
Just-
Tierney Guerin.
Trying to move both at once instead of one at a time. Okay. Any more conversation? Question? Okay. All in favor of appointing Cultural Council Andy Levine and Sarah Madeline Tierney Guerin? All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed?
Quick
Okay,
question,
to-
Stephen, what is the size of that committee?
That's really an unlimited committee,
Okay.
and they really have a lot for people to do, so it's,
So, Dan's on that already though, right?
don't know.
Okay, next one, 5, Conservation Commission, 1 opening. Do I have a motion for Teresa Belmonte?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion?
Very impressive resume.
Great candidate.
Very impressive.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Hearing none. Albion Cultural Exchange Committee, Anthony DeMarco. Again, that must be unlimited, Steve, for that? Is that is it just?
No, we have a number, but
We have a number, okay, but still 1. Okay, so there's at least 1 opening. Okay, so we have a motion and a second, and all in favor, or discussion? Discussion? Okay, all in favor of appointing Anthony DeMarco to the Albion Cultural Exchange Committee?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay. Okay, so license and permits, next. Common victual.
I know, I hate that word.
I hate that word. Tom, how do you pronounce that?
Victual.
Victualler? Say that fast 3 times, okay. From the Remedy Exchange. She's here.
It's a long intro.
Oh, yeah, wow. Thank you for waiting.
That was some good stuff.
Thank
Breath together,
thank you
please.
for waiting 3 hours.
What is the remedy?
Should I just kind of say
Yes,
my
tell
little
us the-
spiel?
Yeah, tell us
It'll be
tell us who
quick.
you are and address and,
After 3 hours.
Awesome.
right, yeah, take a deep breath too.
So I would like to thank you, the Board of Selectmen and women, members of the council, for having me here this evening. I do apologize for my 2 partners could not make it. They have small children, etc. But I'm kind of the main person you'll be working with along the way anyways. My name is Justina Langoni. I am originally from West Roxbury. I do reside in Danvers now. The business, the Remedy Exchange, will be at 41 Tuttle Street. We are taking over what is currently in transition out the porch. I do apologize for them leaving the city. I hear people love them quite a bit. We are a superfood cafe. At the Remedy Exchange, we will be serving smoothies, juice, toast, dairy alternative milks, salad wraps, assorted bowls, raw snacks, caffeinated beverages, and some seasonal specials like soup and whatnot. All super healthy, healing, cleanly sourced things. All products are created with responsibly and locally sourced ingredients. Most products will be made to order, others pre-made and available for grab and go. We hope to open up around August 1st, with hours of operation roughly being Tuesday through Friday, 6:30 a.m. till 7:30 p.m., Saturday and Sunday, 7:30 to 4:30, and being closed on Mondays. We're extremely excited to be part of the Wakefield community and contributing to local health initiatives. So.
I just lost thousands from my bank account because my 15-year-old daughter has been looking for a place for this. So, in where we live close, I can't even imagine what will be dropped weekly.
Awesome. We have a rewards program in the mix, so.
But no, it sounds awesome.
Thank you so much.
We don't really have a place like that.
Ecstatic. So,
That's
and
great.
Wakefield has been truly incredible to work with so far. So,
that's awesome.
Thank you all.
In a few, just a couple of words, why Wakefield? What made you move to Wakefield?
So I had always kind of had a liking for the North Shore. I actually technically grew up in Chelsea. My godmother is from Melrose, and we always came up here for holidays, lots of events. And so I love the North Shore area. We were looking in the vicinity. We had never really found a space that really called to us. When we got into the space, it really spoke to me. Tears fell down my face immediately. But there was just something, the community here is so welcoming and family-oriented. From working with you guys, it's been so obvious that, everyone's so involved around here, the family orientation. People are now investing too in their health and longevity of life. And I feel as if everything from the demographic to the income level and whatnot is just so, it speaks to our mission, and we feel like we're very aligned with the things that Wakefield puts forth.
So, sounds great.
Thank you.
We all want you to be successful. Every person here wants you to work to be successful. If you need something, please reach out to any of us. Please reach out to Steve or any of us.
Thank you very much.
Yeah. Good luck.
Thank you.
Any other comments, questions? Paul, you're shaking your head. You might have something to say down there.
No. The name looks
Okay.
familiar, but I
Looks
could go to multiple
great.
towns, and we're not gonna go there now.
I move that we award the license to the Remedy Exchange.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Unanimous. Thank you very much. Welcome.
Thank you very much for your time.
Do great things. Make us
Sorry for the
proud.
length.
No, that's quite all right.
It was worth the wait. It was all good.
Thank you.
Okay. Entertainment license, Library Plaza Jazz. Do we have a motion on that?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Not from me, but. Any discussion on that? We've had this for a number of years. Fabulous. Town loves it. I love it. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Hearing none? Okay. We have to bounce back to one we skipped earlier. So we're back to public safety building referendum question, town council communications under the presentation action items, number C, or letter C.
I know, I keep touching the screen.
Yeah, well, that's what I was trying to do. It won't work.
So, is this the letter that went around, or no, or what are we suggesting?
Well, I think-
In the packet is the frequently asked questions
Yeah.
for the
Right.
website. So
Awesome.
that's
Yeah.
one that I did send out. That's based on kind of what I've been hearing around town and
Yeah.
at some of the forums we've been at, so.
Right, just to.
Open for
Conversation. Yeah, just my quick comments, just to usually go last, but just this one is obviously near and dear to our hearts. We all know we want to have the safety building referendum passed on June 26th, but again, just to stick with my past, I'd like to put out the questions and answers, whether it's on the website or the paper or wherever it goes. I still don't want to get to the bottom line to tell people how to vote. I want to give them all the information. They know we voted 7-0. They know FinCom was 15-0. They know we were 4-1 in town meeting for the ratio. It's totally necessary to have this for the police, for the town. When the police are able to do a better job, we're safer citizens. I mean, let's face it. So I would like to suggest that we we continue that whole question and answer, whether it's 10, 17, whatever it is, do it this week, put it out in the paper, and tell people what we feel. Not tell them how to vote, but just give them the facts, no fiction. That's my quick suggestion.
I have no problem telling them how to vote either.
Yeah, no, I know that, And it just.
Well, because we're so
Sure.
invested in it, and we
I know,
want them to vote.
I know. I just.
No, we
it's just-
really do.
That's why I just wanted to say that, just to be consistent and,
change your mind.
from me. But I mean, I love the fact that it's going to pass anyway on June 26th for the camera. But, yes.
So
Paul.
my question is, so just again, I'm sorry, I missed it when Mr. Mayor was saying, so the 17 questions and answers were derived from how?
Well, from hearing questions that people have asked, from being at forums, from listening to people, PowerPoint presentations.
Because the chief gave his pretty long presentation at town meeting, and probably at town hall too, but town meeting, and that was very thorough. I think
And these are
people-
questions that I've been asked, like people will ask
Nope.
to me, well, Steve, how can you support this for losing parking when they bump out the building? No, that's not the case. I'm just answering questions that people ask.
Right.
I don't
Sorry.
think people were told the facts when they signed the petition. Seeing some of the names on those petitions, I don't think facts were accurately given to them. So, and I think it's important that we do tell them the facts.
Oh, I agree. You know,
Ed?
I agree that the facts should be given.
Okay, were you done, Paul? I'm sorry.
Yes.
Ed?
I think one thing we're trying to do more of the time is utilize the website. So the fact that we have a running list of questions and answers, and if there's a way that we can have a mechanism such that if people have questions, that it's a living document on the website, so questions can be posted and then answers, provided. I think that feels appropriate. I'm with Peter. As much as it did pass on a 4-1 margin at town meeting, there's still a process in place for those, and they got the signatures required in order to put it on a ballot, and I do not feel comfortable telling someone how to vote on an issue. As a body, I've stated my position previously at the forum that was in the studio, and as an individual, I certainly support this project, but I don't think that this body should be telling anyone how to be voting. But I do think getting the information and the accurate information out there is critical on this and any other issue. So hopefully this will be a good test run for us to see how we can better communicate that. And to my point earlier, we do have some elderly as well, so that don't have access to internet. And so I think we need to think about ways in which to engage them so that they have the understanding. Perhaps it's the newspaper, perhaps it's just in print some other way, but I just don't feel comfortable with the body telling the voters how to vote, but I am comfortable with answering all the questions that people have, because I think people will draw their own conclusions with accurate information.
Paul?
Taking his point one step further, couldn't we somehow connect with Judy and see if we can gather a group of the seniors at the senior center and then make a presentation? I know that candidates have done that over the years, just to put out information to the seniors. Is there anything way that we can do that before the 26th?
Julie? Oh, yeah, Tom.
I just want to make sure that.
Hold on, Tom.
There's one legal limitation we've got to bear in mind here. You're perfectly free as public officials to state how you want to vote. Legally, you can tell people you urge them to vote this way or that.
Sure.
You may not spend town money. That's different than if you are urging people to vote one way or another at town meeting. Then you can actually spend town money. But if it's a ballot question, legally we may not. I thought this conversation was going to lead at some point to, let's put something into a mailing. We can't do that. Yeah.
Okay, good.
Right.
Okay.
You can write a letter to the editor, absolutely.
Right, individually.
You can issue a
Oh,
press
sure.
release.
No, the individuals, absolutely.
And you can do whatever you want with the Council on Aging if it doesn't cost
money.
town money, that's all.
Great.
I'll kick in $10 and buy coffee.
These questions can go on the town website.
Oh,
It's just-
absolutely.
it's not-
There's no marginal cost
Just to be
there.
clear, is there some place that we should direct folks if they have questions that they want to post on the website, so there's one central?
We can do that.
Is it?
Yeah. I mean, they have asked the town administrator now for any question at all, but perhaps on this, any other questions, just email it.
We just have to get an email address there
Right.
so people know
Right.
where to post the question, and then
I
it'll be
had that written
responded
down
to.
from before, yep, we can put
Great.
that as 18.
Great.
Because right now on the website is the full feasibility study, the PowerPoint that was presented at town meeting, and the actual clip of the town meeting. So there's a lot of information if people choose to look at it. And then this would just be another arrow in the quiver there of this. to look
And again, this is not an advocacy piece one way or the other.
Right.
It's simply.
Yeah, answering questions that
Answering
people
questions.
ask.
It's a
Yes.
Q&A.
Yep.
Yeah.
I agree. There's a lot of the answers on here, people did not know, or probably did not hear when they were being said. So, I mean, this is great information to be putting out there in favor of getting this voted on and approved. So, I'm all for it.
Okay, so
I'll put that on.
vote on June 26th. Vote to pass it. Okay. I think we've got everything except the matters, right, Steve?
Yep.
We did. Okay, so I didn't want to miss anything. So, so matters not anticipated by the chairperson within 48 hours of the meeting. Who wants to go first? Maybe I'll ask for a volunteer.
Can I go first?
Sure. Sure, you never go first, Steve. That's great.
Get up.
Sure. You can't leave until the meeting's over.
I know.
Okay.
In front of you is the actual warrant for this town election. These special elections are very tight timeframes, so we apologize to you. This is what will be posted in the item per every election, 2 Sabbaths before. So I would now, this week, and I apologize, we put this on your chair this morning. It's exactly the question that's in the ballot. Would ask that the board approve this warrant. I'd like that in a motion.
I move that we approve the warrant as presented by Steve for the public safety building.
Second.
Any discussion?
Steve, can I just ask, is there a reason that it doesn't go to other papers as well?
I think the reason is that the item is the paper of record in town.
Okay, not
I
the
mean,
Observer,
and-
not,
No, I mean,
Okay.
the circulation is so much wider, and I know it costs more, but
Yep.
it does get in front of more people.
Okay. Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Hearing none, 7-0. Okay.
I have one more thing.
Oh, boy, Steve, you're
Then I'm
really...
gonna- then I'm gonna- then I-
Then you're
then
done,
I'm gonna
huh?
shut up.
Okay. We'll let you go first next.
At our, I used to say this was the, one of the worst meetings of the year coming up, but maybe not. Setting of the water and sewer rates will be at our next meeting on June 25th. I would ask that the board allow us to publicize that at 7 PM as a public hearing, because that is a public hearing. So I would ask for a motion on that.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Thank
All
you.
opposed? Hearing none. Tom, since we're out of order, Tom, you might as well, do you want to say anything, Tom? You sure? Oh, it's a big chance. Okay. May never happen again. Julie, do you have 48 hours?
No, it was a great festival at the lake on Saturday, and I just wanted to say that I was actually on the lake at 7 AM Sunday, and the place looked like nobody had ever been there. Like, it
Wow.
looked great.
Thank you,
So
DPW.
kudos to the DPW or
Yeah.
the Neighborhood Association, or everybody probably chipped in on that. It
Is
looked
that because
wonderful.
you're the liaison of the
To
DPW?
Well, I had
Could
to.
be. Things are already
I had to,
changing.
yes. No,
They
it
always
looked
do a good
great
job.
at 7
Yeah.
AM on Sunday.
Ed?
2 things. First, congratulations to all the organizers for Festival on the Lake. It was a great event. It was well attended, and the weather held out, which is awesome. Something else I did on Saturday too is I made a trip to we'll call it the pit or the yard waste facility on the Haunt, and it got me thinking that something I'd like for us to be thinking about going forward is how we can have that open every weekend on Saturday and Sunday, because I can tell you, looking at that card and making sure that I was hitting it on Saturday for things I wanted to be doing on Sunday was less than ideal. And I imagine there's probably a very low-cost way of expanding some great access for those of us who use it. So I think we should be thinking about that going
Sure.
forward. Perhaps at the next
It's a
meeting we
good
can
point.
raise that.
Sounds good.
Thank you.
Ian?
I just want to briefly say, we said goodbye to one of the great Wakefield residents this past week, and Phil McCarty. And as most of you know, his daughter was my best friend since age 12. So a lot of people talked about Phil and how humble, and he loved to argue, but in a really thoughtful, fun way. And I remember being at those dinner tables at 14. You know, I was a young Democrat, his wife was a quiet Democrat, and Phil was a Republican, and we'd go back and forth on all these school issues, and it was always so lovely. And I think we could learn so much from him. I could probably learn some, you know, from him tonight, because I got a little hot under the collar with some things, and maybe I should have handled it differently. But he, you know, 87, he lived a good life. It wasn't tragic. It is sad not to have him, but boy, did he set a tone that we should all follow in discourse.
Tony?
Couple things. Good luck to the Wakefield High School track athletes that are going down to North Carolina for the States. I ran into one of them tonight. Secondly, kudos and thanks to Steve, specifically our state delegation, Paul Bredor, his assistant Patrick Prendergast, that I was on him constantly. So about 8 months ago, about 8 months ago, I took a looking at downtown Main Street by the Galvin. I saw those outdated MBTA signs, and I got in contact with our state delegation about just they had no use to being there, and just continually was on them like, you know, let's get this done, let's get this done, let's get done. So on 6/4 last Monday, a representative of Keolis met us down there. Had no idea how bad the rot and wear and tear on some of those signs were. The next day they were removed.
That's
So thank you again, Steve. And you know, taking selfies is cool, but making the town a better place for nothing is much better.
Good job, Tony.
Thank you, Tony. Maureen?
Nothing.
Nothing? Okay. Paul?
Motion to adjourn? No. I have nothing at this point.
No. What if I have something?
That's why I said
Okay.
I have nothing at this time.
Okay. Yeah, just a quick note on Sunday, there was the fire memorial meeting down at the Lakeside Cemetery. You're right. And that was a great occasion, great speakers, and duly noted that the fire department as well as the police, all first responders, are critical for the town. And that's a segue for another reason to vote June 26th, to give them the ability to work and help us during our worst times. When I've ever called 911, I'm not doing really well, so or anyone in my family. So I urge you to vote yes to pass for the expansion of the police department. It's mostly giving them more space, and it's about 80% of what the reason is. So, and without that, almost 4 hours, I think we're good. Anything else, Steve? Nothing? Okay.
Move to adjourn?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Adjourned.